Hello and welcome back to my channel. I'm Bob the Booker and today I wanted to try my hand at making my own tag. Risky business. But my kind of thinking, I've been sort of watching so many really good tags come up, and then just when I think I have an idea for one, I kind of look back through and realise that it's already been done. So here's hoping that, I don't think I've managed to find this one being done or kind of something too similar. Let's hope for the best. So in typical fashion for this channel and its name, and the sheer amount of light I've got on my face, but given the name of this channel, I thought I would have a little look at Booker Prize bingo, or tropes bingo. Now this sounds a bit bizarre off the top, but please do bear with me on this. Essentially the idea is using kind of some of the tropes and some of the sort of jokes and references of the Booker Prize to talk about other books that we may also really enjoy. I should say right at the beginning of this, these do not at all have to be Booker Prize books, or you don't need an in-depth knowledge of the Booker Prize to be able to do any of these prompts. I've tried to make these prompts as much as possible things that refer back to the Booker Prize, but that is an opportunity to talk about other books. So with that hopefully out of the way, I'd really love to, please be gentle. This is my first tag, but I'd love to hear some of you have a go at this as well, and I'll go through some of these prompts. Now, this first prompt is named after an author who just has so much attention within kind of Booker Prize circles after winning 2 in a row and almost kind of, well, being longlisted for a third. That is, of course, Hilary Mantel. So the Hilary Mantel prompt is for an author who is highly, highly praised, who is sort of well known, who you absolutely love. That could be because, they're just an author who really works for you. You may have found out about them because of the high praise, but then even, stayed on after you read them because actually that hype was really justified. So here, an author whose work you just think is really, who is so well loved and you just think deserves that high praise. And for me, that has to be James Baldwin, who every time I hear about James Baldwin, it's always in these sort of reverential tones. And I was quite nervous about reading James Baldwin for the first time. And when I did, I absolutely fell in love with his writing. With Go Tell It on the Mountain, with Giovanni's Room, with Notes on a Native Son. I've still got loads more of his to read, and I just think he is such a brilliant and exciting voice. And he would be my choice for the Hilary Mantel Award for those kinds of authors who are just so known and praised, but you kind of love regardless. Next up is the Beryl Bridesmaid Award. Now, side point here, Beryl Bainbridge was nominated for the Booker Prize 5 times and never won, and kind of earned, probably unfairly, this nickname of being the bridesmaid. She was always very gracious about it. And so this prompt is, for me, an author or a book that is constantly overlooked by either prizes or doesn't have that bigger readership or anything like that, but who you really think deserves that love. And for me, I chose Sarah Moss. I have read, I think, 3 of her books now, and absolutely adored every single one. I just think she has such a powerful voice. Her writing's so tight and forceful and has so much energy to it. And so for me, Sarah Moss is exactly that kind of author who I kind of can't believe it took me so long to get into or to hear about. And now that I have read some of her work, kind of can't understand why she's not a bigger deal. And yeah, I think Sarah Moss is just one of those authors who I just think is sublime. And I'm really excited to see more kind of come out from her on that. The next prompt is new voice. Now, so often with book prizes in general, and especially in recent years with the Booker, there are some books on the list that almost nobody has heard of. Sometimes they've not even come out by the time that the shortlist or long list is announced. And so this prompt is all about books that are brand new voices. So it could be a debut or the author's still sort of fairly early into their writing career. But books that are just these really great new voices who you think should be championed and would love to see kind of more people getting in their hands. For me, that is absolutely Sarah Gilmartin with A Dinner Party. I've again rambled, Dinner Party, A Tragedy. I've again rambled about this in a separate video, but for me, this is just such a stunning new voice in literature. And I absolutely love this book. And so for me, this is exactly the kind of new voice that I want to see being really celebrated in future prizes, and just sort of more generally, I want to see more people getting books like this into their hands and being able to enjoy it. And so yeah, that's the prompt of new voices. The next prompt is called the Offshore, and this prompt is kind of in recognition of Penelope Fitzgerald, one of my newly sort of favourite authors, who won the Booker Prize back in 1979 with Offshore. Nobody saw it coming. And so this prompt is all about books that you read that you didn't really expect necessarily to like, but absolutely fell in love with. So something unexpected, a voice, a new book that really took you by surprise and that you fell in love with in sort of various ways. For me, this is a book that I read quite a while ago, I think when I was a teenager, and fell in love with and reread recently, just remembered how amazing it was. And it's quite an old book, I think. It's called The Kryptonite Kid by Joseph Torchia. And this is all about a young boy who worships Superman, and as the book kind of goes on, you kind of get a sense that there's sort of something a little bit homoerotic going on with it. But either way, it's just such a beautiful, beautiful, stunning book, and not something that I would have expected at all. It completely took me by surprise how much I loved this, and rereading it, how much I still loved it. So yeah, a book that just for you is really surprising and kind of caught you off guard, but that you love regardless. Next up is a prompt for the PreBooker. So the Booker Prize started in 1969. I really want to know from you a book that was released before 1969 that you just think is an absolute classic, an absolute brilliant book that you just think deserves a bit more love. It's an already very loved book, but my choice for this is Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf. I just think it's a stunning, beautiful piece of work, and it is the kind of thing that I think, I mean, obviously the Booker isn't the be all and end all, but I kind of feel like if the Booker Prize had been around in the sort of time of publication, it would have been at least shortlisted. I just think Mrs. Dalloway is just such an absolutely genius piece of work, and something that I always want to go back and reread and engage with again. The next is the Iris Murdoch. This is for an author who is kind of well established, who is well known, but when you go and sort of check out their back catalogue, you realise just how many books they have, and it's quite an intimidating one. So this is a prompt for an author who you want to read more of, but have no idea where to start, normally because they have such a big back catalogue. For me, this is Muriel Spark. I really enjoy her work, the ones I've read so far, but my goodness, she did write quite a lot. So it's always that kind of thing of where do you start? There are so many to read. I want to kind of read all of them. Luckily, hers are quite short. But books that you just think are, authors who you just think are just brilliant, but there is so much of a back catalogue to go back and check out. Next up is the International Booker Prize prompt. Now, obviously with the Booker Prize having now the International Booker Prize as well, there are so many more works of fiction in translation that are kind of being given a wider audience as well, which is fantastic. So this prompt is all about a translated book that you absolutely adore. For me, this has to be a book that I always go on about, and it's kind of a young adult book, so I'm not sure if it would ever really be considered for a prize like this anyway, but that is Momo by Michael Ender, which I absolutely adore. It's the kind of book that just fills me with so much joy and so much pleasure, translated from the German, and I just think it's brilliant. I just really love it. And that's the kind of a work of translation that I am so glad happened, because I'm so glad that this book was able to be in my life as a result of that. So yeah, get thinking please about some of your favourite works in translation. The next prompt is called Judging Panel. As there is a team of normally around 5 judges each year for the Booker Prize, I would love to know from you which sort of fellow booktubers or people you watch on BookTube do you think you would love to judge a prize with. So somebody who you think could have either really interesting insights, whose opinion might be similar to your own, or whose opinion might be entirely the opposite to your own. And yeah, I'd love to hear kind of why that is as well. So for me, I'm kind of torn between quite a few people here who I think could just be fascinating to sit on a panel with. So the first few people who went through my head were Eric from Lonesome Reader, partly because he and I think agree on quite a lot of books, so that would at least mean that we were normally quite good at getting our favourites into the shortlist. However, I also think someone like Britta Berler is just so interesting. She's so sharp and incisive with her thoughts on books, and as a result, I'd really love to kind of hear her kind of really digging into the kind of meat of each of these of kind of a book on a list. I also think two other people could be really fun to be on book kind of judging panels with, and some of these people have actually probably have done judging as well, I know. So next would be Simon Savage at Savage Reads. I just think it would actually make the whole judging process so much more fun. He's just such a great, he's a card, I believe they say. He's a good egg, a really fun person who I just think would have not only great insights into some of these books, but would also just make the whole sort of feel of it really fun and great as well. And finally, someone who I think could also be really interesting is Daniel over at Guilty Feet. I love his insights around books. He brings such a wealth of knowledge to so many discussions around books, and I would love to see how he approached judging you know, some kind of prize around things like that. So yeah, I'd be really fascinated to kind of see that in action. So yeah, I'd love to hear from you as well. Who do you think could be really fun to be a sort of fellow judge with you for an imaginary book prize, whether it's the Booker or something else entirely? I'm intrigued to hear some of your answers, and also to find out new booktubers to follow as a result. And finally, the Booker Prize wouldn't be the Booker Prize without a little bit of drama and controversy over the years. In some years, there have been judges storming out and quitting because of a choice of a book. In the case of 2009, Sue Perkins was one of the judges, and it kind of came down to a 3-2 vote in favour of Wolf Hall, but against Coetzee's Summertime, which I prefer actually. And you know, they spent sort of the rest of the judging panel quite lovingly, but sort of still sort of jokingly referring to other kind of panelists as sort of agent bites of idiocy. I can't remember the exact quote, but a quote basically from Summertime that implies that they're idiots. You've also had people refusing to come to the award ceremony unless they know if they're going to win in advance. You've had a name being chosen in the case of the 1983 Booker Prize, where Shame by Salman Rushdie was originally chosen as the winner, and there was a last minute change where the head of judges, I believe Faye Weldon actually, it kind of went to kind of go and phone through the result and changed her mind at that last moment and gave us a different winner entirely, and gave us Coetzee as a winner then as well. So I would really love to hear from you about kind of a book or an author who you would get that heated and animated about, that you would defend them to the death. A book that you are so passionate about and feel so much love for, that regardless of what people say, you will keep pushing and defending this book. For me, this can be almost nothing else apart from Ducks Newburyport, which I will defend constantly. I adore this book and I think it deserves so much love. And if people, you know, I can kind of understand why it's a daunting prospect, but at the same time, I will defend that book to the death. So I'd love to hear from you about a book that would get you kind of heated enough to you know, potentially storm out if things went wrong in a judging panel. Something that you care about that passionately, that you think it deserves that kind of justice and that kind of anger. And Cindy has joined me for this last part. So those are the 8 prompts for the Booker Prize. What did I call it? Let's start that again. Those are the 8 prompts for the Booker Prize Trope Bingo tag, to be probably given a shorter name at some point. So I would love to hear some of your thoughts. And again, please do encourage people to get involved. I don't think it needs to be, you need to have any particular Booker Prize knowledge for this. I've tried making it as open as possible, and as you'll see, most of my answers are books that weren't considered for the Booker Prize or weren't mentioned in some form. And I would love to hear from you about, yeah, some of those books, some of those ideas, and feel free as well to suggest kind of any extending prompts to this to make it even richer as a tag, hopefully. And I hope somebody does it. So I would like to tag in this, Booker Boy himself, KD Books, who I just think would have some really interesting perspectives on this. I would also love to tag Daniel over at Guilty Feet, and I do need to do your tag. I will at some point, Daniel, I'm really sorry. I would also really love to tag, oh, who else have we got? Sorry, Mike. You write this, Cindy? Okay, great. So I'd also really love to tag Ben over at Doom Antidote, who I think, again, could have some really interesting books to add to this. Simon Savage over at Savage Reads, who has done quite a lot of book judging himself. And as a result, I'd really love to get his perspective, particularly on the judging question. And finally, I would... She's just being really cute at the moment. I'm very sorry. There we go. And finally, someone I'd like to tag is someone whose videos I've been watching a bit recently, who I've been really enjoying, and that's Roz over at Scally Dandling About the Books, who I think would have some really interesting perspectives on this as well. So those are some book tags. Are we okay there, Cindy? Okay, she's great. She's having a nice little life here. Oh, sorry, actually, other person before I forget, I entirely wrote this down and then completely forgot to come to this. I would also love to tag Pei over at Attention, who I just think has some really interesting perspectives, reads a lot of books that I have not heard of as well, and so I think could also have some really great perspectives on this. So I'd really love to hear some of your thoughts. Please have a go at this, and again, I hope this doesn't feel too bookery. I've tried to tone down the bookeriness of this to make it as accessible as possible, but hopefully we shall see what comes from that. So that's been me. I've been Bob the Bookerer with a Booker related tag. Where does he get these ideas? And I'm also joined ably by little Cindy, who, can we see? Yeah, there we go. Is having a great little life down there. Yeah, say hi to the camera. We've been Bob and Cindy. Take care and enjoy your reading. Bye-bye.